Vierne. Vierne? Archfey, about this high? It gestured above its head. Yeah, that's the one. That's weird. Just a second. Brown's eyes rolled into the back of its head and it slouched, nearly dropping its cigarette. The rest of us shared a worried glance. I took a few deep breaths and rose to my feet just as Dobrin recovered, looking far more sober than it had a moment ago. I see, it muttered. Care to share? I asked. Not really, but I suppose I must. Have a look at the stump. The three of us approached the stump that Dobrin was sat next to. As we got closer, we realized that the wood had been carved to look like a forest. Bug sat patiently on top of the small carvings, as if marking points of interest. We are being attacked, Dobrin puffed at his cigarette. Vampires. Vampires? Why? I'm unsure, but the screams coming from the fair realm indicate something sinister. What I do know is that they're well organized and using captured wilder as shields. What's a wilder? I asked. Me. And the other fair folk. Essentially, anyone who is an intricate part of the cycle of wilds. Ah, I said, barely understanding the explanation. Anyway, the use of our comrades as shields is a rather smart move, as it prevents us from using the Archfey to their fullest potential. Why's that? Nash asked. Well, our strength isn't exactly subtle, Dobrin chuckled. By using our powers to kill the brood, we'd be unable to avoid killing the wilder captives. You don't want to kill your friends, I said empathically. What? No. They'd just come back. Wouldn't be a problem. The issue is that killing them is considered a sin by the higher ones, meaning that we would be punished for it. If we kill enough of them and the enemy manages to kill us, well, we might end up on their side of this fight. Yeah, that would be bad, I nodded. So, why are we here? The higher ones pulled a bit of trickery, as they do. You see, I requested help from a certain group of wilder which Viren is a part of. This group of wilder, however, owes my group nothing and is not beholden to our calls for aid. If they were to aid us, we would be in their debt, Dobrin explained. I am fine with this. The other kings are fine with this, but the higher ones dislike us trading favors with each other. One wrong word leads to chaos and such. So, they took it upon themselves to interfere and send you instead, since we are beholden to each other. Yeah, but Viren owed the higher ones a favor. Why didn't they just use that to get them to help you? Mortals trading favors owed by others is quite a bewildering concept, if I'm honest. When you owe someone a favor, they are the one that you owe that favor to. No self-respecting wilder would ever get caught in the web of mental gyrations required to justify having to do something for someone you are not beholden to because you're beholden to someone else. That's just silly, it giggled. Plus, I don't think the higher ones wanted them to help us to begin with. They definitely wanted YAU here, though. Any idea as to why? Nope. Swearing under my breath, I looked at the trunk map. What am I supposed to do? Go and fight an army of vampires? I could definitely take down a few of them, but judging by the number of red bugs on the stump, that would just be a drop water in the ocean. If you can't use the Archfey, what are you doing instead? Yolk asked. Using the lesser wilder. Don't tell them I called them that. Dobrin giggled again. But there's a problem there, too. The enemy is grabbing our soldiers and using iron to capture them. The various forms of fairies and such are putting up a fight, but it's not enough, I said flatly. What sort of formations are you using? Formations? The three of us glanced at each other and then stared at Dobrin in disbelief. Like battle formations? How are your troops sorted? Sorted? We're just fighting. So is the enemy, for the most part. Like a mob? What? I trailed off, thinking. So it's basically just a large brawl between two groups. Don't be dismissive. This is a proper war, not some riot, Dobrin crossed its arms. What weapons are your soldiers using? Magic, for the most part. The bone and blood Fae sometimes use swords and spears. This is a mess, Nash muttered. No offense. Some taken, Mumbledobran's eyes narrowed. If you want to turn things around, you're going to need to be more organized, I explained. If you have groups that use similar weapons, then it's easier to know where to put them to counter the enemy. Since the enemy is trying to kidnap your soldiers, some safeguards should be taken too. Safeguards? Yeah, well, riot shields. IJUST told you this isn't a riot. I know. But if the enemy isn't coordinated, then they're basically rioting, right? And the way to counter a riot is with phalanx that uses big shields. It helps control the crowd and keeps your people from getting pulled away from the safety of your group. If your Fae use this tactic, it will protect them as they attack the mob of vampires. Plus, unlike a riot, you don't have to be concerned with whether the mob lives or not. You can use large spears behind such a shield wall, Yolk said. Stick the vampires and it will be much easier to ignite them. And then you won't have to rely on the Archfey, Nash added with a nod. Mumbledobran rubbed its chin. While the king of Archfey thought to itself, I thought about how ridiculous it was that I was teaching riot tactics to a mythical being. I'm not even an expert in the craft. I've just seen a few on TV and wrote a paper on it for social studies. How will they see it aim their spears and spells? The king of Archfey asked. Clear shields would be best. Made of plastic. I trailed off, realizing what I was suggesting. Yolk and Nash gave me a confused look. Well, that's not an option, Mumbledobran laughed. But, yes, I think we can come pretty close to it. A bit of magical manipulation here, a bit of craftsmanship there. You can get your forces in the rear equipped, then trade them with the ones at the front, I suggested. Is there a way to help them get organized? Yes, that won't be an issue. All Wilder can move as one when we have to. It's distasteful, though, but likely necessary to survive the current situation. Good. That will help make sure the Fae don't get dragged away while. I paused, reflecting on how invested in this I was getting. While they take care of the enemy. Before I came here, reading wasn't really my main pastime, and I didn't often choose something from the isekai genre. But I've read stories about people going back in time and teaching medieval people about modern weapons and tactics. It usually goes pretty well in the stories, but there was one story that stuck out to me. The main character taught some people who were being victimized how to fight using modern tactics, and they eventually defeated the lord that was victimizing them. Then the king of the land issued a warrant for their arrest because they'd broken the law by going against their lord. The MEC then taught the people how to make guns, and they defended themselves against the king's soldiers. But the author didn't write it as a power fantasy. The deaths depicted were gruesome, and there was even a scene where one of the king's men begged for his life. He said he had a family, a little girl, but the villagers shot him anyway. Then, at the end of the story, the MC had begun to become tyrannical. The villagers killed him with the guns he taught them how to make. God, look at me. I'm 18 years old and I'm giving advice to someone on how to wage war while worrying about divulging too much information because of a story I read when I was 16. The absurdity of my new life wasn't anything new to me, and I thought I'd gotten used to weird things happening. But every now and then, this odd feeling of being out of place creeps up on me. You might even be able to recover some of the faith that had been stolen away, Yolk added. I hope so. This entire fight hasn't sat well with me, Mumbledobran said, extinguishing the cigarette. I would especially like to know what the damn vampires are doing with my kin. They're turning them into vampires, a feminine voice from very close behind me said. Whirling around as quickly as I could, I barely caught a glimpse of what looked like arms before my face was covered in warm, squishy flesh. I struggled, both to free myself and to breathe, but the arms were locked around my head like vice grips. Briefly, I considered biting, but decided against it, because it might think I'm flirting. So good to see you again, Nick, Tit said. I knew I smelled you. MMMPH. I replied. Tits, Let go of the human, mumbled Oberyn said with an exasperated sigh. With a sad whine, Tits released my head. Gasping, I took a few steps back and eyed the archfey warily.